Innovation Fika. It's actually episode 180. They're all recorded. They're all on YouTube. So go to YouTube and look for Innovation Fika, and you'll find 170 or so episodes, of which most of them are with guests, all about innovation and entrepreneurship and startups and anything there in between. So make sure to check that one out as well. Anyway, but today we're talking about readiness levels, and I am going to focus on the scaling part, because that's something that I feel that we need to do a lot more work on in Sweden. I mean, starting is easy, scaling is hard. We need to, and Europe as well, we need to be a lot better at scaling our companies. And actually, if you use the readiness levels, there are a number of transition points in the readiness levels that will help you scale better, or at least start scaling easier if you actually use the readiness levels. But first, I'll just run through some of the basics when it comes to the readiness levels, I thought, just to get everybody up to speed. So very, very briefly, I won't do the KTH Innovation thing. I'll just say, hi, my name is Donny. I work at KTH Innovation. I'm a business coach, first and foremost, and also innovation strategist here at KTH Innovation, where we support, as you know, students and researchers and employees at KTH. The KTH Innovation Readiness Level, which is something we developed for ourselves. I'll come back to a bit about background, because the background is also a bit important. Is today actually used by more than 3,000 organizations, 3,200 last time I checked last week. And it's spreading very nicely. And now we have some really, really cool user cases as well from all around the world. And now we're also seeing translations being done. The Mexicans have done the Spanish translation. The Brazilians have made a Portuguese translation, and the Finns and the French have, of course, translated into Finnish and French. So lots of things are happening out there, and we are really very proud of the big global community that is happening. So very, very briefly, this is a super short, super fast presentation. You've probably heard it before, but I'll just run through the whole thing. That yes, we have a high caseload, low entry threshold. A lot of projects come in, 400 plus projects come in every year and come into our process, which means that we have about 300 projects at any given time in the pipeline. And just checking yesterday, this is from 9 coaches. We have around 50 projects each. I just checked yesterday. This is my pipeline. I have 62 projects that I'm coaching now. So high caseload. You need to know where are they in the process, how far they come, who needs which help, and you know, like this, the validation, market validation grants that the VFT that we run. Who gets money for what? How have they come far enough to apply for money? When they get money, what are they applying for money for? Can we measure the value creation that is being done with the money that they get? Can they, we need to go from this to this. How can we measure what value the money is actually helping do? And then, of course, on top of the open process, we have all of these programs where we bunch people up in the same room at the same time to increase efficiency. I mean, how do we handle all of these hundreds of projects? Well, we have programs where we have like the launch program, which is our startup program, where we have 15 potential startups starting twice per year, a 12-month program. And then we deliver that to them. And so then the question is, who has come far enough to apply for a program? How far is a program going to take them? How can we measure that the program actually delivers value, start to finish? Are they actually learning something? Where do we want them to be? And where do the people after us want them to be when we're finished with them? But most important, of course, in the head of the poor entrepreneur, especially the first timer, there's always too many post-it notes, so no note gets addressed, and there's always too many roads, so you don't know which way to go. So some kind of guide, some kind of which way should I go, and in which order should I do stuff. So a lot of data points in this. Where are they in the process? Who gets money for what? Who's come far enough to apply for a program? Where do we want them to be when they exit the program? How far do the incubators after us want us to take them as an interface refinement tool? Sort of, okay, you have to be here when you start. So, okay, well, then we know what to do before you. So as an ecosystem tool, it's a really, really cool thing as well. And of course, this, how can we help all of these startups? I mean, anybody in the system, and this is me addressing the system, right? We have to stop using how many startups have we started as a KPI. It's a super sucky KPI. It doesn't count. Starting is super easy. Scaling and surviving is super hard. We need to become better at scaling. So we need to start understanding which transition points can we see, and which transition obstacles or thresholds can we identify early, so we can at least lay the foundation for scaling. That doesn't mean it's going to work, but we can at least lay the foundation to increase the chances for successful scaling. When we started with an Excel sheet. It was like, oh yes, we need a traffic light system. We need green, yellow, and red perfect, which of course didn't work because it very soon got overloaded. And then we found this old TRL model that NASA built in the 70s and 80s, where we liked what we liked with that was the 1 to 9 methodology. The rocket. I have a new idea for a rocket. The rocket's on the way to the moon. And we like that sort of, okay, it's from from inception to transaction, from idea to market, that kind of thing, from first idea to operations. So then we realized that using that though isn't enough, because I mean, if you're only using TRL, you're riding a one-legged horse. And being from the Nordics, we need a six-legged horse, right? Like the Norse mythology. So looking at innovation, I mean, if we look at successful innovation, addressing first and foremost a customer market, right? In a profitable, sustainable way, developed by diverse teams that have resources to commercialize ideas and results. If we have that as one way of defining this, I mean, there's 1,000 ways of defining this, of course. Then, yes, we do need scales to handle things like customers, the ones that pay for it, business so it can make money, team, the ones that actually make it happen, funding so they can make it happen, and IPRs to protect what happens, and of course the tech. I mean, that's kind of ingrained. I'm not going to say it's the easy part, but it's kind of where it all, that's there anyway. So we need to address everything else, especially at a tech university where people are tech driven. We need to add the other ones. So, but enter the KTH Innovation Readiness Level, where we added these other 5 dimensions to create some kind of basic, foundational, generic, guide for people as they are trying to go from idea to market, inception to transaction. 6 scales, everything the same as we're following the TRL methodology very clearly. 1 to 9, a front with a very sort of basic explanation, and then a back with more granular descriptions. And this is something we're working a lot on now and updating them. So there's some updates coming this year. We're working on new updates. Hopefully will come out this year and also next year. So in like end of 26, I see that all 6 of these will be updated into a fully new version. Not that we've sort of changed order or anything, but it will be much clearer, much easier to use, much tighter, and a much better tool. So anyway, it's what, not how. It won't tell you exactly how to do something. That is kind of your job to figure out, okay, how do we get to the next point? It's kind of self-explanatory. If CRL 4, customer readiness level 4, where you say that the solution you have, or the need is confirmed, the need is confirmed from multiple customers users, then we need to confirm the need from multiple customers users. So then the question is, how do we do that? Well, we probably need to speak to them. Lo and behold, we need to leave the lab or the office or just leave the room and speak to people. That is usually the first and hardest thing that people keep on missing. But it won't tell you how to do that. That's your job. And it measures progress. It won't tell you about quality or anything about potential. Something at 2 isn't a worse idea than something at 6. It just hasn't come as far. That's the only thing. But we see the main purpose, it's a communication tool. I like it as a super analog. I mean, I've even printed paper on table where you meet people and you sit down and you point to, okay, where do we think we are now? Where do we think we're going to be in 4 to 6 months? What does that mean broken down into SMART goals? Who is going to do what, when, and how do we make this work together? That's, and then that transitions into creating roadmaps where you can start planning and adding a roadmap and saying, where do we need to be, hope to be, have to be in a certain amount of time? What level is that? That's that level. And then backcast to where are we today and what do we need to do in which order and so forth. And then, of course, you iterate that every single time you reset your sprint. And then, of course, as a guide to help you balance your development so you miss as little as possible. And finally, for coaches and mentors, of course, in a coach team, alignment, and also working with teams. It's a great tool to always have something to work on. So the different groups that I kind of mentioned here: for teams, alignment, role mapping, plan, do, execute, evaluate, balance development, coaches, mentors, quality assurance, always have concrete talking points, always keep momentum going. And then, of course, as I said, with a large number of cases, a portfolio overview to see where is everybody and what's going on. And then for organizations and ecosystems, what I talked about, the interfaces, right? Like in, I think this image, yeah. So it is like, this is us, KTH Innovation on the left, and then we have this interface with the incubators and the EITs, and also the holding KTH Ventures, changing name now, which is, the big transition point there. So, defining and refining interfaces. Where do you want them to be when they reach you, and so forth. And then Vinnova is using it a lot for grant assessments. And we're seeing a lot of things. Screening, but we do a lot of, when we're going, like Victor, our program manager, when he's going to some kind of international program to South Korea with 5 startups, he'll say, well, we need them to be here and here and here and here. So he can sort of say what maturity level they have to be able to apply for the program. So, yeah. Yes, but the biggest win, yes, is of course for the teams. Team communication, team alignment, team planning, and team progress. It's a great way to get people. It's a conversation tool it's a coffee table book more than anything else, right? It gets people talking, like the old Liquor Old commercial. If anybody is as old as me to remember that. Anyway, yeah. So if you can, as a team, get this into your communication, just as even if you're only using it as a checkpoint on every like monthly or quarterly sprint, just to see, are we in the right phase? Are we where we were hoping to be? Have we done what we said we were going to do? Where do we want to be in 6 months? How can we define that and plan that? Do we actually agree upon what an MVP is? Who is the customer? Which customer tiers are we working for? Who's the user, buyer, decider, influencer in the different customer tiers? And all of that goes into all of these different levels. Tons of things to talk about. And I think the tool will help you not only sort of just run and put out fires, but it will also help you address the right things in the right order. So I'll encourage any team to actually, if nothing else, use it as a guide. It's a guideline. And as I usually say, the only tool to complement the 6 scales, the readiness levels, is the action plan. It's a super simple thing. I use it on a monthly basis for my team, and I just say sort of, where are you now? Where do you want to be? Where do you need to be in a month or 4 months or 6 months? And then you break down the different levels to actual actionable smart goals, broken down to things we can measure, things we can say, yes, I did, yes, I didn't, and so forth. And that's another thing when it comes to setting goals. It's you have to make them super actionable so people can actually say, yes, I did it, or I did not, which is kind of, we don't have a project management course here at KTH Innovation, but I feel that we actually help people become better at both running, leading, and also participating in projects, because you can become better at estimating your time, how long time will something take, and then actually delivering on things that you promised. We can talk a lot more about that, but I think that's super important. And we need to build in from the start. We need to build in a methodology and a mindset of wanting to deliver on assignments. And we need to be really, really good at breaking down coming assignments into bite-sized chunks. So at the end of the sprint, if it's a week or a month or a quarter or whatever it is, we want a green check mark in the box, because we want to deliver. We don't want a full list of red and then people saying, I didn't have time, I couldn't do this, because that is a very sort of destructive, counterproductive way of working, because in the end you just feel, oh, I can't do anything. We're not doing anything. You need to have the feeling of, I did it, deliver, and then green check mark, and that builds a positive momentum into wanting to deliver. Super important and super underestimated when it comes to project management. We keep on forgetting that, on how important it is to teach people and help people get to a point where they're actually delivering So the action plan, super important, and the only, well, I won't say the only tool. Yeah, the only tool you need. Super simple. And yes, we released it on an open source Creative Commons license. And today it's, as I said, 3,000, more than 3,200 organizations, 4,500 people signed up online. On LinkedIn, you'll find lots and lots of webinars describing the model and how other people use it. This is an old slide. Good grief, we're 1,040 members now in that group, 1,040 innovation professionals from all over the world. So join the Readiness Level Forum online. It's I will say LinkedIn is a super sucky networking place, but we're actually updating this year. There will be a new website with a discussion forum and much more activity online. So join this place, if nothing else, just to be notified of when things are going on and start networking with the people online all over the world, from Japan to Brazil. And I've also pinned all of the previous, I do webinars every other or every third month with users. So we have Imperial College there. We have DTU Denmark. We have NTU Norway, NTNU Norway. They've built a really cool digital version that you can download and use for free. The Jalisco people in Mexico, they've built a really cool tool where all of the incubators and companies in Jalisco, Mexico, have uploaded their programs, and then it will automatically match to startups as they rank themselves in the readiness level, and then they get matched to different incubators. A really cool tool online. And then I did IBL the other month here with Amanda and her colleague. They've written a report on circularity in the textile industry, and they use readiness levels to assess how circular and how far different companies have actually come in circularity. So really cool application area for the readiness levels. That's also online. And coming up is the Brazilian one, where we have the Portuguese translation, and they've also built a really cool online thing. Oh, additional tips for the model. Don't forget, all levels are interconnected. They will affect each other. You move up and down. I mean, this is a living organism thing, right? So you learn thing in customer, and then you go down, and then you learn thing in customer, and then your TRL goes down, and you TRL is really, really tightly connected to the BRL. So depending on how you are selling something and how your customer wants to buy something, that can actually affect how you build something. So if you've only used TRL previously and you add CRL and BRL, you'll see how much they affect the TRL as well, once you start actually getting into the whole customer user delivery mechanism. And then you realize that the TRL is not just technology, it's technology, environment, and delivery. So it's lots of, all of the scales have at least 3-4 levels. And just to end off, don't forget the most important lesson of all. If you're standing in the forest with a map in your hand and they don't align, please trust the forest. Don't trust the book. You're right. It's trust reality. Do reality checks. Look up. Is this relevant? Are we doing? Leave the office. Speak to people. Go out there into the world. Super. This is a guide, right? So, and then of course we were talking about time before, and I was talking about how to plan. And this is something I do with my teams. We play around with dimensions of time, where we say, well, where do you need to be in 16 months? Well, we want to have first users in testing. So that's CRL 6. Yeah, but what does that mean for tech? Is there a dependency that we can see with tech? And then, okay, the team needs to be in place to do that. Then, okay, well, do we need to pay anybody to do that? So where does the funding need to be, and so forth? So just to give you an idea of are the dependencies that we don't see that we now can start sort of mapping out. And then I do the same thing with sustainability and lots of different things. So you can use it for a lot of stuff. Then, of course, I will also encourage you to come to KTH Innovation here in this summer. We started last year with the KTH Innovation Readiness Level Summit. Last year, we had 54 people from 15 countries flying in to spend 2 days talking about how they use or want to learn from others how they use the model. It was really cool. And the application is open now. You can find it in the Readiness Level Forum group. You can find it on the KTH Innovation Level, KTH Innovation webpage, or you can just get in touch with me and you can sign up. We already have 15 signups now. We opened it last week. Just really cool. We're aiming for a bit more, about 70 people this year, and we already have people from all over the world signing up. So that's cool. So yes, and I said, ask questions or whatever in the comments. I mean, we're here to speak to each other, so don't be afraid to ask things or comment. when starting out with the model, I always encourage people to just sit down and look at each other and talk to each other about, yeah, but what are we doing here, right? And what does 9 mean to us? I mean, when the rocket is on the way to the moon, what does a rocket look like? What's it built of? How is it actually propelled? Who's on the rocket? Who's driving the rocket? Who's steering the rocket? Who's in charge on the rocket? Do we need more people on the rocket? Which moon is it actually going to? Do we know that? And so forth. And what happens when it gets to the moon? What happens then? Kind of thing. So just talking about it doesn't mean that you have to lock down a specific end scenario, but you need to get the discussions going, especially from researchers. This is a really interesting question. So what do you want to do with this? And then, of course, as we start working with it as a team, what do the different levels of the different scales mean to us? I mean, what's an operational environment in the TRL? What's a relevant environment? Who are the customers? What customer tiers? I was talking about that before. Which customer tiers are we looking at? Who is a customer? Who's the first customer? Who's the second customer? What does the adoption curve look like? Who's the early adopters and who's the late laggards? Don't phone them. They won't come on board anyway in the beginning. And who's the user? Who's the buyer? Who's the decider? Who's the influencer? And so forth. And then I'll start looking at, yeah, but where are we actually now? I mean, and where are we going next? How far can we actually, what do we think we can reach realistically in the coming sprint? And then on a personal level, sort of, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I mean, in this academic environment where I am, we have people saying, hey, I'm at KTH doing a master's for 6 months. I just want to have something fun to do. I mean, this isn't more than that for me. And somebody else says, this is my life's work, my legacy. I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this. Neither of those are right or wrong. It's just different ways of seeing a project. And you need to start speaking about that very, very early. Because as you know, one of the biggest reasons for things falling apart after a year or two is people and team. So team work is super important. Big shout out to Hanna, by the way. Hanna Wiljeblad in the Big Step project now. We're updating the TMRL together with them. It's going to be super cool. We're building tools for leader and group development for all Swedish incubators. It's going to be released this autumn. It's going to be awesome. And we are laying the groundwork for future Swedish successful companies in that project when it comes to the people part. Really cool. Really cool. So, and then of course, when you start, actually, it's easy to look at the scales and just say 1 to 9, which you should. That's how you start. But then when you start breaking it down and you start going granular, you're seeing that there are so many sub-dimensions on all of the scales. So, I mean, this is just me playing around. This is TRL, right? So you have, TRL is actually 3 things. It's technology, it's environment, it's delivery, and all of these sort of words that, what do these mean to you? And are we speaking about the same thing when we're talking about an MVP and closed beta, prototype and relevant? And, are we actually in agreement of what that means, so we know that we are in the same place, which we usually never are, because we usually, if you just speak to a team, they can't even agree upon what an MVP is. They just say MVP as, we need an MVP. Yeah, man, the MVP to prove what? Towards which customer group? And what's a good result and what's a bad result, and all of these things that MVP is not just something that the developers work with. MVP affects everyone. So just getting your sort of head into what it actually means is a really, really interesting exercise, and just talking to each other. So, and as you get started with the KTH as a team, I'll say, just start by throwing stuff on the wall and see what sticks. Start fast and fuzzy. Don't go slow and perfect. It's just start and don't go overboard and do it and use it for too much. Just start using it as a discussion tool to see sort of where you are, where you're going, who does what, and have we done what we said we were going to do. Some key points is, don't forget that, you need to fill a full level. There's no sort of 3.2 or 3.4. And it's always better to stay lower and aim upwards. You always want to get the feeling of that we are accomplishing something. You don't want to leave work and feel that, oh, I wasn't enough today either. Because do that many days in a row, and sooner than you know, people will start feeling really miserable. So you need to get the whole feeling of, I did a great job today. I actually delivered on my project today. You need that. You choose a time frame and sprint length, be it a week. I mean, I'm down to weekly sprints with my early teams. So what are we doing from today, Wednesday, to next Wednesday? Okay. And I know I'm saying all of the things that you already knew, and you're going, oh, for Christ's sake, Tony, can you stop saying stuff I already know? But I will say it anyway, because it's super important. When you start planning a coming sprint, be it a day or a week or a month or 6 months, you do not start by giving people assignments. You start by, first of all, breaking down everything that needs to be done into bite-sized chunks, and you time it and say, how long time is this going to take? Blah, 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 blah. So you have like an idea of these things need to be done to that date, and they're going to take this much time. And then you go around the room and you say to everybody, okay, everybody, you tell us how much time do you have to allocate to this project? But most of the projects in the beginning, people are doing other full-time stuff like studying or research or working somewhere just to make it work, right? And then if you say, I'm sorry, I'm like in a, I'm in an exam period, I can, 4 hours is actually time I can spend on this. It's these hours here. Cool. Then you are not allowed to take on more than 4 hours of actual assignments, because I want you to have a green check mark in that box next week. Super important. Yes. And then SMART goals broken down, quantified, measurable actions. Don't just say, we need to make the website nicer. What does that mean? How do we measure that? How do we know it is? Yeah, so measurable, quantified goals. And then you just execute, follow up, evaluate, and then you go back at it again. And then you learn that sort of thing, how to work in a group. There. And then now, boom, the actual title of today, from startup to scale up, the transition points. And this is something I've been working on quite a lot the last sort of 6 to 8 months with the readiness levels, because I'm seeing that there are so many things that are sort of hidden in the, not hidden, but they're there, but we don't address them in that way, that if we are smart about it, we can actually start laying the foundation much earlier for our scale ups to be in an early stage, instead of trying to play catch up once things start working. So I'm just going to run through some things that I picked up as I've sort of, when I use the scales, and I'll just sort of give some pointers on things to think about. But again, please comment, ask questions, and keep the discussion going here. So let's see. I mean, if we just do a general thing, patterns across all readiness levels, we have things like, okay, we need to start letting go of what worked early on, right? Because we start something and it's like more of like a hobby nature thing, we have this idea, we're speaking to people, we're doing some trials, and it's very sort of intuition driven decision. I feel like doing this, or it feels like we should be doing this. And then you're sort of moving that into a more process driven growth, where you're actually doing not only the thing that feels right to do, but also the things that are right to do in the order of things to come. And this is probably one of the hardest parts, right? We're moving from doing to leading. So we've started something, we're bringing people on board, and now I have to detach myself from the project, because I have to lead the project, which means I'm not coding or selling or building or painting or whatever, or operating or whatever I'm doing. If I'm going to be the CEO and the leader of this team, I need to detach myself from that and take a step back and actually be the leader of this thing and work with system and processes, so it's not dependent on me. It has to be a self-sustaining, a sustaining unit that can build things. And then this is also this is where I don't know how many of you have a diving certificate, but when you take a diving certificate, you in the super early stage, you have a buoyancy vest, a vest which you fill with air so you float up, and then you have a weight belt to weight you down so you sink. And the like the first lessons when you're in the pool usually is sort of just to sort of, can you sort of levitate? And in the beginning you're going, oh, I'm too light, and whoop, and you're going up, and then, oh, I'm too heavy, and you sink down, and you keep on going up and down. And the same thing here with agility and structure. I mean, if you add too much structure and have too many sort of rules and regulations, and we need to do this, blah, 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 too early, people feel sort of, oh my God, it's we have more rules than we have work. But if you don't have any rules, then it's just, it's anarchy and chaos. So that's the balance between finding how much structure do we need in this sort of frame to keep people going in the right direction. And that kind of balance is interesting to start finding quite soon. And then and this is hard, of course, if you don't have the funds or the money. But two things when it comes to hiring: you always hire ahead of the need, and you always hire up. You always hire people better than yourself in doing something. You never hire down, because then you're building a really bad company. But always hire ahead of growth if possible. You try and identify and look for and find the right people before it becomes critical. Doesn't mean that they're paying them a salary, as soon as you find them, but you need to start finding people. So you're always on the lookout for good people that I could actually add to this, this puzzle I'm building here. So hopefully it looks as good as the picture on the front of the box, which is my vision of what I'm trying to create. So, and there's always roles that are more critical than other, like sales, tech, leadership. Yes. So always be on the lookout. Doesn't mean that you have to bring everybody in and hire everybody, or you don't want to bring in people too soon either, because it costs too much money and they won't have enough to do. So then they'll leave because there's nothing to do. But always be on the lookout. So coming down to some, actually really sort of more detailed points. If we look at the CRL, which of course is the most important readiness level of all 6. So transition points, we have like around 5, 6, right? CRL 5, 6. Then we're seeing some big shifts going. We're seeing things like we're going from this like initial market validation to a scalable customer acquisition, which is a big shift in how we approach people. Because it's a lot about, in the beginning, it's like customer discovery. We're talking to early adopters. We might have a user group. We put up a group on Facebook or Reddit or somewhere, and we bring in some early adopters, and they're co-creating, their ambassadors. And then how do we move from that sort of early thing where it's more like I know a guy, or do you know somebody who, to actually validate customers at scale? And how do we reach more customers at scale, which then will need not just you sort of posting another thing on LinkedIn, but it's also a structured sales process in CRM systems, sales funnels, sales playbooks. How do we systemize the sale? How do we get the 100 calls, the 10 discussions, and the 1 sale? How do we build that funnel, and how do we start working that? It doesn't mean that it has to be in place and be working, but we need to start thinking about it very, very early of how are we going to scale up our sales effort and customer validation effort? How is that going to scale? And very, very common pitfalls here is like we're stuck in founder sales, which is like, it's because somebody, yourself, is like super enthusiastic, and you are it. You are the company. And anybody, and I've heard people say to me when I'm running startups that as long as the customer gets to meet you, Donnie, they'll probably buy it because you're so enthusiastic and you can always make it work. Yeah, but that's cool. But I won't be able to sell or meet every single person that we are going to sell to. So we have to be able to detach that and build some kind of scale into that part. That is super important. And then, of course, as we start looking at the customers, we have to realize that the people that we get on early on, the super early adopters, they might not even want to follow us because, over relying on early adopters, because they have innovation. And once we move into a more sort of mainstream thing, when lots of people are buying, the early adopters will leave us because they'll be looking for the next innovation. So we need to understand the customer segmentation. Who is the next big bulk of customers? Where are they? How do we readdress them? How do we change, if we need to change our actual sales effort, our message, our look and feel? Do we need to do that or not? And so forth. So this idea of how do we go from very founder-driven sales to people that we know to something that actually scales without us having to be in the game all the time. And on CRL 6, you'll find, defined first sales user acquisition process and initiated structured sales activities. And this is exactly what I'm talking about here. Initiated structured sales activities. How can we scale our sales? That's number one. Without that, doesn't matter how much you build, doesn't matter how many you are, if you don't have a structured sales process that can scale, you won't be bringing in more customers, period. And then I'll go to the business part, which is equally important because when you have to make money here as well. Transition points is like 4 to 6, like 4, 5, 6 there is when we're sort of going from like validating our business model to actual scalable operations. And this is all about operations and building the whole sort of repeatable business processes into it, the business model, actually, the scalable pricing, sales, and distribution models, it actually works. We see that it's not just me trying to convince somebody to pay, or a pilot, or I'll give it to you half price if you try it kind of thing. It's actually buy this because it costs so much, and over time, so. And this is also when we start introducing financial planning, budgeting, dashboards, the whole P&L structure, everything sort of starts coming in here. We're becoming a business, an actual business. We're going from a group of people who are building something more or less for fun, and like we're going from hobby to business, right? So, and it's scale. And again, scale of operations. You need the budgeting. You need the financial planning. Some pitfalls here. We have this sort of putting out fires mode, right? So, and we try and be bootstrapped, but sometimes we bootstrap ourselves to death, because in the end we're just too few people. There's too much to do, and then things just blow up. This comes back. I mean, the clear ownership part that comes back into the team morale, which I'll be showing as well. But the whole sort of defined roles, who's in charge of what, and how do we actually scale it's going up, right? And then the when it comes to the profitability part, I mean, again, growth at any cost. So how is this going to make money? You don't have to be making money from day one, but I need you to show me a clear path to profitability. I need to understand that you understand and you have a clear idea of how you're going to make this profitable, and not just once we become 10 million users, it will work itself out. No, that's not going to work. You need to get the numbers out. You need to start working with the numbers early and have actual metrics that are showing that this is an actual viable, profitable, sustainable business idea. Here on BRL 5, key assumptions, and this is super, super, super important. Look at this. Boom. Willingness to pay. That is something you have to chase. I don't want you to hope or think or assume. I want the validation by market feedback that there are customers out there that are willing to pay what it costs, so we can actually do calculations on this for real. Do not miss that. Don't stick your head in the sand. Don't hope. Don't assume. Don't think. Prove it. If you don't have that, you do not have a viable business idea, period. So, team morale, one of the reasons things break, as I said, and this is nothing strange, because I mean, anybody who has been in any relationship knows that the first 6 months, rosa glasögon, pink glasses, everything is fantastic. You love the people around you. They're fantastic. Oh, I love this person. We love working together. It's so fantastic. And you have oversight with everything that people don't do or miss or forget or whatever. Yeah, it's okay. In any relationship, 2 years into the game, I mean, there's a reason why it's called the 2-year crisis, right? It's like everything annoys you about this person. Everything he or she does or says, it's annoying. The way he or she acts, the way he or she dresses, the way they do not or do run a project, it drives you crazy. Really, really important. And that's why most teams fall apart as well, is because they start fighting. And then, as I always say, if you haven't written paperwork when you're in love in the beginning, you'll have a really messy divorce, because nobody knows what's going to happen when it falls apart. So please get the paperwork sorted. But anyway, transition points, 4 to 6, around there. Same, it's around the same levels there, but it's from founder driven to professional organization. Again, people that are driven by enthusiasm and motivation, but that only lasts, you only get so far with enthusiasm and motivation. You need to build a professional organization that can actually work together as pros. Shifting focus from execution to leadership. Again, the leader, we talked about that, going from doing to leading, coaching, delegating, building structures, making things work, building a bigger thing. Middle management to bridge strategy and operations. As groups grow, somebody will have to be responsible for that group. That's just the way it is. Not that you have to fill the room with middle management. That's another killer. But you need to have groups that actually are self-governing. And then things like, it might sound overkill to talk about HR practices early on, but you need some kind of recruitment pipeline. Because once it starts scaling, people are going to be running in through that door, And I mean, we have loads of examples now today in Sweden of large organizations that are struggling. They will not deliver. We have big organizations in Sweden that have been given a lot of money right now in the Swedish, I'm talking about the Swedish defense. And they are struggling because they cannot hire people fast enough. They have a very solid, I won't say old-fashioned, it's not that. It's an old process that is built on long term. You have like an 8-week, 10-week security check thing. You have 3 or 4 sets of interviews. That's like a 4 to 5 month process after they've picked, the candidates. So that's another maybe 4 months. So they have like an 8-month recruitment process. And if you're going to recruit 3,000 people in a year and a half, that's not going to work. I'm not going to say what they have to change, but I'm just saying that, you need to figure out how we're going to recruit people once. I mean, I've worked with companies where we went from 20 people to 800 people in 3 years through acquisitions and hires. And you were meeting people in the corridor that you'd never seen before. Like who are you? Oh, you've worked here for 3 weeks. Oh, hi. Cool. Nice. And how do we actually get people on board? And there's so much to work on here. Putting things in place to handle it. Pitfalls. Yes, founders struggle to let go of operational tasks. Cultural drift. This is very, very common. The 4 core founders, they know exactly everything about the business, the values, everything. And then suddenly there are 40 people and you see this employee doing something completely out of order. And you run up to the person and say, what are you doing? Why are you doing it this way? This is not what we are. And then the employee says, I don't know, nobody told me, and suddenly it's like sort of, you don't know where you're going because, yeah. And then, of course, in the beginning, everybody does everything. And then suddenly people have to start specialization. And then, you have to only do this. Well, I don't want to. I mean, I came here because I was allowed to do all of this. I don't want to focus on only doing this. So loads of things that can happen here in team. But it's an important part here. And when it comes to team, I'll say two things that super important on Team RL4. A champion is present. If you don't have a champion in the project, I mean, in our case, in KTH Innovation, you will not transition into the project phase if you don't have a champion on board, period. If nobody's running the project, it's not a project. Then it's just a loose group of people talking about stuff. A champion, somebody has to be the one responsible to put their hand up and say, it's me. And then you have to start discussions on roles, commitment, ownership going forward early. So you have an idea at least. Doesn't mean that you're setting things in stone, but you have to have that in their heads going forward. So you have an idea of what you're building here. And then, of course, TRL, which is like an obvious thing, right? You're going from MVP to scalable technology. You're going from prototype to production grade system. And these are usually, I mean, depending on which business it is, this is usually a killer. If you're in any kind of healthcare or food, I've done a lot of work with food. One thing to stand in the kitchen and mix something up that tastes really good, but getting it on the shelf in ICA with a 12-month shelf life or an 18-month shelf life for frozen goods, that's a whole different thing. And all of the compromises you have to do with additives and things to make things last longer. And, going from prototype to production grade is important. That's something you have to start super early because sometimes it will not scale. And you need to know that from the start. And then when it comes to software, DevOps, CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration, continuous development, and testing processes, and how do we update our software all the time, continuously? Tech debt overload. We have MVPs. It's like it's duct tape and silver tape or glasspinnar, duct tape and whatever, and then you have to go from that to something that can actually deliver and. You can leave it there and it doesn't break. And then sometimes it's just too tech heavy. So many things there. But in TRL, I'll say, on the TRL 7, operational environment, moving into an operational environment that addresses all the operational requirements and specifications where tech will be used by end users is a very, very big shift. And that's something we need to plan for early on, no matter what you're building. I mean, if it's an app, even it is one thing to have an APK on your phone or sandbox test flight on your iOS, but putting it on App Store or Google Play where it's downloadable, you can pay for it, you can update it over the air, you can get, that whole thing. That's a big transition. So some key questions here. I'm seeing that the time we're getting to the point where we're ending off as well. Some key questions is, of course, number one, is there an obvious market fit out there? Is there a clear willingness to pay? If you don't have a yes to those two questions, then we need to go back to the drawing board and rethink what we're doing from day one. Stop building, stop doing anything. That is number one, a clear, obvious market fit with a clear willingness to pay. That is crucial for anything that wants to go from, hey, I'm having fun building a cool thing, to something that can actually become a viable business. Is the customer group large enough to pay, or pay enough to enable growth and sustainable business? The people we're working with, are they enough people there who can pay in the actual Excel sheet to show that, yeah, well, as we extrapolate, this will actually make us money? And how does that change over time as we change user groups over time and customer groups? One thing that I do a lot of work with when it comes to early stage startups is figuring out what is the replicable, scalable component. What can we break out and scale? And we can do loads of things manually. MVPs and prototypes, we can go out and rapid prototyping is great because it can prove that people might want it. But rapid prototyping risks us actually missing out on the whole idea of how does it scale, because a rapid prototype is not a scalable thing usually. How do we go from that to something that can actually scale in production, and where does it produce, and how many can we produce at unit cost to make us money, and so forth? We need to start talking about that super early. How is this going to scale? And is there a committed team that is prepared and available to work full-time and spend full focus on this project? So many times people join projects because they're fun, and and after 6 months, like, sort of, this is a lot more work than I'd expected. I was just this whole startup industry is so cool and so fun, but I wasn't prepared to do any actual work. Well, it is a lot of hard work. It's 7 days a week, day and night, 365 for most people in the beginning. That's just the way it is. And you don't have to force people to do the Chinese, 7, 10, 10 or 9, 6, 6 or whatever it is. You don't have to do that. But you need to have at least people that when you start getting funds in, and when it starts becoming a real business for real, they're prepared to stay on. If this starts working, if we get the funding, if we get the money in, if the customer starts paying, are you prepared to actually do this as your job 8 hours a day, 4 days or 5 days a week? That's the key question. So there are some really important things, some precision points. I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm available at Donny@KTH.se. Just send me a message, join on LinkedIn, join the KTH Innovation Readiness Level forum there. Come to the KTH Innovation Readiness Level Summit here at KTH in the summer. And in anything, just send me any questions you have. And good luck with your scaling. Go scale, go big, and succeed. Thank you very much, everyone. And with that, I will say thank you. And if there's no other questions, I will close the meeting. We have 3 minutes of I'll let 3 minutes here. Any questions? Magnus is writing lots of good comments here. Registration for the summit. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next Frukostdaten seminar on EIT Digital, addressing the Swedish investment climate. Cool. Very good. Swedish investment climate here on 10th of June, the next Frukostdaten webinar. Any other questions? Any other comments? Anything? Either write them in here. You have another minute to go. Or, as I said, send me a message, email Donny@kth.se, or just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the readiness levels, starting or scaling or whatever. Thank you, Eduardo. I really appreciate you commenting on that. Hope you have fun with the readiness levels. And with that, I will say have a fantastic Wednesday. I will see you next week again if you come to my Innovation Fika, 9 a.m. Wednesday. No, next week I'm in London. I won't be doing this. I'll be recording this for next week. Anyway, bye for now, everyone. Take care. It's 9:59 and signing off.